Welcome back on the AM show. And of course, we still maintain our trajectory talking about security matters. Now, there's a nationwide push to retrieve illegal small arms in circulation. The National Commission on Small Arms and Light Weapons says there are over 1 million unregistered firearms in the country. Now, this comes with just 45 days to election 2020, and the Commission is calling for an increased security alertness. This follows a statement by the police service, which identified some 4,098 areas across the country as hotspots. And these hotspots are prone to violence in the December polls. Now, we'll be joined by the Executive Director for the International Action Platform for Small Arms and the Executive Director of the West African Network for Peace Building shortly. But first, here is the Executive Secretary of the Commission, Jones Aple, stressing the need for urgent action, that is to avert any explosion at flashpoints on election day.
From the police letter that we received in our office, they have declared about 4,098 areas as hotspots in these 2020 elections. What it means is that, not that because at the places determined at the hotspot, something will flare up. But what it means is that look at that place more carefully. And so if nothing is done, then something will happen. So the essence of this campaign that we are doing is that Ghanaians shouldn't keep quiet. Napoleon Bonaparte says that communities are worse off not because of the activities of bad people, but because good people keep quiet. So Ghanaians should not keep quiet. We should talk. And irrespective of where you stand. As I say, we are Ghanaians first before our political persuasions come in. But that should not divide us. Elections, they are just means to select leaders.
Well, I'm sure you are well briefed on the sort of interventions that the various security agencies are putting in place. From where you sit, in terms of confiscating these small arms, over 1 million that are in circulation without, certification and all that, do you think that we're doing enough?
Without sounding alarmist, I think we have to do more. That's the reason why you find media commission doing something, small arms commission doing an activity, peace council is doing so, the police itself, election security activated. It is in response to things like so. As for the weapons, whether we like it or not, from what we monitor in the media space, clearly should give us an indication that people have weapons in Ghana. Right?
If I sound persistent, I want you to speak categorically to the issue of politicians and others wielding, small arms, whether registered or not registered. Brandishing them gives a certain, idea of endorsement and so on that people sort of use. What would you say about that?
No, so just to say, normally when you speak on some of these things, it raises the issue as if you want to castigate any political group. The politicians I believe, should take themselves out of this. What we all want is a secured Ghana. We want security for our people. After all, the politicians now, tomorrow, they will not be there. The next generation will come. So we want a secured Ghana. We have a law, Arms and Ammunition Act, which clearly stipulates that you can't discharge or display your firearms in public. So you can't go. So as a public servant, as a professional, I'll say what the law says. The law says that don't do it. Don't come and discharge or brandish or display your firearms in public. And the law, I think it is quite clear and explicit. Do I need any further explanation? The law frowns on it. Okay. And so if anybody does it, that's what the law says. The law must take its course. Okay.
So what would be your specific comment to how the Honorable Himebisa Wakumsen? You want to say anything?
And joining us via Zoom, Chukwuemeka Eze, West African Network for Peace Building, and Bafo Amwa, International Action Platform for Small Arms. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Great. So, right. Welcome aboard. Now, this is a very important conversation. We're having a very thorny one. And I'd like to find out from you, first of all, just how much of a concern is this proliferation of small arms in Ghana, for example, especially as we prepare for election 2020? I'll direct that at you, Chukwuemeka.
Well, you know that when there is availability of small arms and light weapons, it also emboldens conflict actors. And what that means is that it provides some level of confidence for those who want to engage in political violence. And in the case of Ghana, what we have seen over time is that whenever the Commission on Small Arms and Light Weapons, whenever they bring out their statistics, it is a bit frightening, partly because the environment is heated up already. There is a lot of tension around the election. There are a lot of other pre-election issues in many communities. And therefore, when you hear of this number of arms circulating in the hands of non-state actors or unapproved actors, it is cause for a lot of concern, especially given that sometimes the environment is actually fertile for the use of such arms. Of course, mainly because of youth bulge, unemployment, and other systemic issues.
Now, Chukwuemeka, back to you right before I cross over to Bafo Amwa. You talk about this proliferation, but it's been going on for years, decades, in fact. We've always known that we've had this stockpile of ammunitions in our country, illegal, of course. The Small Arms Commission has instituted some incentives to get people to return these illicit arms. But it appears none of that is really working, with over 1 million of them in the country. What do you think can be done in addition to stem the tide of all of this?
Well, persuasion alone is not usually enough. The morality is also not usually enough. The question to ask, and that's why I made reference to systemic issues, such as unemployment and poverty. The question to ask is, small arms for what? What is the person holding a small gun, for example, doing with it? If the person is benefiting from the use of small arms, when you say return it, you return it in exchange of what? So it has to be return it in exchange of skill, or return it in exchange of employment opportunity, or return it in exchange of food on your table. So it's usually not enough when you persuade people to return. Only very few will do that. While those few are doing that, and those structural issues still exist, others are actually hoping that they are in possession of one.
Let me come now to Mr. Amwa. Now, another matter of concern is smuggling, and across the West African sub-region, we know that oftentimes there's smuggling across Ghana, Togo, Nigeria, and the rest. Recently, Dr. Eben Chambers was stressing that matter, and he's spoken about tightening security at the borders. Is that a solution for you?
Well, it's a possible solution that we need to explore. We have our citizens living at the borders. They are the ones who keep crisscrossing these borders, and those who are doing arms business, they have a way of also crossing with their wares in terms of weapons. And so I think if we strengthen border community strategies, we might be able to reduce perhaps arms in circulation. And so, yes, I think it's a strategy we need to encourage government to take a critical look at.
Now, even while stressing this bit, I pose the same question to Mr. Eze, and I'll pose the question to you. Just how much of a problem could this actually create in election 2020? Because we have 4,098 hotspots now that we have to grapple with. The Electoral Commission will have to deal with those. And of course, it's incendiary if there are illicit arms there as well. Just how problematic could this be in election 2020?
Definitely, it's a potential for disaster. So I'm glad the security agencies have clearly demarcated and that they are going to provide critical security presence in these hotspot areas. I think we need to also encourage the public education the civic education, because any mistake we make that allows tensions to blow over will be a mistake on our part, because we are living with the weapons. Let's face facts.
Now, beyond, sensitization and all of that, which is actually proffered by the Executive Secretary of the Small Arms Commission, moving even beyond this election into the next year and going forward, the Interior Ministry from time to time has intimated that it will put in place certain steps to stem the tide of illicit arms. But that really has not caused a steady reduction in the numbers. Moving into the future, what more can be done? And I think I'll bring in Chukwuemeka on this one before I come back to Mr. Amwa.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those structural issues that I referred to need to be addressed. They are long-term issues. Number one is that we need to look at the development agenda and see how we incorporate some of these structural issues in long-term, in a very long-term, as a part of the long-term development agenda. For example, I feel seriously that in most countries in Africa, we are not exactly using the kind of curriculum and the kind of teaching in our schools that makes the youth employable and also dependent on themselves when they come out without looking for white-collar jobs. So I think it is high time we begin to review the kind of subjects and courses we teach our youth, so that there is already the school becomes a preparatory ground for the youth to develop some kind of skills that can respond to some society needs, rather than just graduate reading some of these courses that we inherited from the colonial masters and become unemployed. Secondly, I think it's also important that there is some kind of intergenerational dialogue to begin to more robustly engage the youth with regards to what kind of society do they want to see in the future. After all, we say the youths are the leaders of tomorrow. So based on that kind of platform that is created, then it becomes very easy to engage the youth in dialogue and make them part of provide an opportunity for them to be part of the design of the tomorrow they want.
I believe you've already started touching on some of those strategies that moving forward we can actually employ. Mr. Amwa, what would be some of the strategies you would proffer moving forward to stem the tide of small arms proliferation?
Well, I think we need to use probably a 2 or 3 prong approach. I agree with what my brother Chukwuemeka has just said about educating the young and positioning them in such a way that their orientation will not be enhancing demand for arms. But I think the arms that we are talking about are arms that have been in our communities for quite a long time. Once a while, we get new arms coming into the country through our borders, because much as custom tries to block these loopholes, people still get smart. They put it into their imported cars and cargoes and now other things. So I think we need to intensify the military police approach also, because this condone and search sometimes it's expensive, but I think when you have a hotspot where you believe that people have got a lot of arms, I think it's high time we encourage the military and the police to move in, circle the area and search and retrieve some of these arms. Otherwise, I don't see how people are going to bring it, because the economic factor is also there. The local guys who are making these arms are making them because of economic reasons. And if you take it away from them and you don't provide them with an alternative, then I don't see how they are going to stop the arms production. So I think we need to try several strategies if we want to have great control over these proliferation issues.
Well, speaking of control, the Small Arms Commission says it's been retrieving about some 2,000 arms, which is a step in the right direction. But I recall that some 10 years ago, the UNIDIR actually engaged West African states and citizens with regard to this proliferation, and they were talking about practical disarmament and peace building. What role, Chukwuemeka Eze, do you think the global body, the United Nations, should play further in aiding countries on the West African shoreline to actually be less, susceptible to small arms proliferation?
I think the first thing to appreciate is that we need some kind of mutual understanding and some kind of mutual responsibility. The international community cannot continue to make it look like Africans are hungry for guns when the African market is also part of the market that they are using to increase the economy. So I think it is important that we engage in a more robust way with our international partners to say that beyond just giving us money for arms proliferation to control arms, it is also important that you also control your own end and ensure that you don't sell arms or supply arms to non-state actors, to non-official actors. That's number one. So that kind of engagement, bilaterally or multilaterally, needs to be provided. The second one is that we need also to begin to develop industries within Africa. We need to also ensure that we begin to provide opportunities that will make arms very unattractive to be even assessed or even used. Then, of course, we need to intensify the effort that is already started in West Africa about marking arms, especially guns, within the West African region, to the extent that now, if you pick a gun, you already know where it is coming from. So because also part of what is hindering the economy of the region is that we don't have common markets. We are talking about integration, and yet crime and criminality is not allowing us to integrate as much as we want so that we can have a more robust West African market that provide more opportunity for our youths. So if crimes is making us raise the wall, and yet the vision of the community is to have a borderless community where people can interact and trade freely within the community so that we can maximize the potentials of the ECOWAS community space, then that's a very big problem for even to grow the sub-region economy.
Now, Mr. Amwa, Mr. Eze has already touched on ECOWAS and their protocols. In fact, Article 51 talks about some of the measures that could be implemented to, deal with this problem. But with all of this happening and with, the president of Ghana being at the helm of affairs of ECOWAS, don't you think our authorities across the West African sub-region are just paying lip service to the issue, especially when here in Ghana, you would have prominent people, members of parliament, ministers brandishing guns and the rest? Is that not a subtle endorsement of the use of arms, maybe even illicit arms?
I wouldn't say so. I want to really applaud what our governments in West Africa have done over the years. The only problem is that people who are often at a certain point in time making decisions that are also important for controlling this proliferation, who are committed, often leave the scene, and new people come, and sometimes they are not having the same opportunity to appreciate the challenges in the first place. Look, since the ECOWAS Convention, which demanded that without an exemption certificate, a member country cannot bring weapons into this sub-region, we have enjoyed some large degree of peace because weapons were not flowing into the region the way it used to be. Transparency principle has also helped because every member state needed to be informed, and they had to agree that a particular country that has a need for bringing in weapons can do so. But of late, maybe the people who were very passionate about these laws are no longer in office, and maybe the new people need to be encouraged to take the same approach and develop the same passion for controlling these weapons. And that is why I believe that civil society perhaps needs to up their game, because really the Convention on Small Arms was an initiative of civil society. And I believe we did a good job by getting governments to sign this convention. So yes, let's continue to talk about it. Let's continue to support government in taking closer look at these laws and making sure that it works. I think that is what I would say. I don't believe there is lip service here. I believe what is happening is that when politicians change offices and positions, sometimes the new people are not perhaps informed and educated with what some of these previous decisions had achieved and what we believe should continue to achieve. So yes, let's keep encouraging them and let's keep reminding them of their commitments.
I'll address that same question to you, Chukwuemeka. Do you feel our leaders are doing enough in that respect? I'm sure you'd recall the instance of Member of Parliament Hawa Kumsin and the drawing of a gun and the firing of shots and all of that. Do you feel our leaders are up to it? Do you feel they want to do the right thing?
Well, I wouldn't say so exactly, but I think that more is expected of public servants with regards to the control of small arms and light weapons. Politicians, in my opinion, should be the one to take the lead and show good examples of his passion and his posture towards keeping some of these protocols that have been signed at the highest level of the state. So if members of parliament or politicians who want to actually take control of the state are also engaged in that which the citizens should not, then it becomes a big problem for me. But like my brother Bafo said, I think that at the highest level, both at the level of ECOWAS member states and also at the level of the ECOWAS Commission and at the level of civil society actors, there is the consensus in what needs to be done to control our small arms and light weapons. And I think that what is left is actually the political will in the various member states. The texts are clear, the normative framework is very clear, and I think that what is left is that political will to continue to implement. And like he said, it's also important that we have some kind of traction with regards to what has been achieved and what needs to be achieved more. So over years, over the time, I think that we have made very big progress with regards to controlling arms and light weapons. Bearing in mind that this is happening amidst some of the most dangerous conflicts that have taken place in and outside West Africa, with the tendency to continue to have spaces for these arms to continue to flow into our region.
Now, Chukwuemeka, I'll start with you on this point. Dr. Ibn Chambers has been talking about recycling small arms. And of course, even as he touches on the borders, the porous borders that we have in Ghana and beyond on the West African, in the sub-region, there's also that thorny matter of COVID-19 to deal with, which also means that manning the borders and all of that is slightly problematic. How exactly do you feel this can be executed to ensure that small arms are not smuggled from country to country, especially in these times of election? We've all seen what happened in Mali. What would be the strategy to pursue?
I think that beyond the marking of the arms, which is very effective and which is also taking a community approach, I think that one of the things that I've also noticed, and I'm sure Bafo can attest to this, is that we are thinking that it will be possible to address the issue of small arms as separate countries. I think we need to continue with this community approach, looking at the West Africa sub-region as one entity. That way it will become difficult to transfer arms from one place to the other. The second thing also is that even the ECOWAS protocol makes it also challenging for you to continuously manage the borders, because we are talking about borderless communities. It is only the crimes and the criminalities around the border that is even making us continue to have the posts that checks people the way they are being checked. So on one hand, we want to improve trade and have a common market. On the other hand, crime is not allowing us to do that. Of course, the COVID-19 and other pandemics in the region, including Ebola, have told us how the walls, the borders in West Africa is mere artificial. So it tells you that what happens in one community, one country, have bearing in the other country. So he is right to the extent that even managing the pandemic and how you are conscious of the fact that you don't want to be infected is also affecting the stop and search protocols that exist around the border. And that may likely increase the proliferation of small arms. Secondly, is that the pandemic is also coming with a lot of hardship. So what does that tell you? What that tells you is that there's a likelihood that crime will increase. In many places, it has already increased. And for crime to increase, it also means that there will be market for small arms and light weapons.
Just before we wrap up, I'll address that same question to you. What do you think would be the strategy to pursue in the midst of COVID-19? Very briefly, sir.
Well, I think first and foremost, all our security agencies at our borders must be provided with a proper COVID gears for them to be able to have the courage to do their job. Because crooks can sneeze and everybody will run away because of COVID. And then they will have a free pass with their words. So I think, yes, we need to make sure that our security agencies are properly equipped to do the job during COVID. And again, we have to ensure that we have community leaders who are really trained to understand and appreciate the issue of proliferation so that they can, in turn, encourage education of their members and show them what they can do to assist with these border management issues.
Next question as we wrap up, it's directed at both of you, but I'll start with you, Chukwuemeka. So the EndSARS situation is ongoing. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has called on the youth to discontinue the street protests and constructively engage government in finding solutions to their issues. Now, addressing Nigerians on Thursday, which is only yesterday, President Buhari said he was pained that innocent lives had been lost and that the tragedies are uncalled for. He also added that some people are spreading deliberate falsehood and misinformation through social media. That is the situation there. What do you think about EndSARS and how charged it has been in light of the discussion we are having, Chukwuemeka?
Well, I've always argued that the focus, whether it is the government or third-party interlocutors, should not be on EndSARS. EndSARS, as far as we are concerned, was just a trigger, that now emboldened the youth to do the kind of thing that they did. So the first thing is that there was this illusion amongst the successive governments in Nigeria that we do not have homogeneous youths in Nigeria, and therefore that it will be difficult to mobilize. So we have, if you like, Muslim youths, Christian youths, Northern youths, Southern youths, and therefore that the youth cannot come together to do the kind of thing they did. But what I think that they fail to understand is that there is always a connector. The connector is unemployment, the connector is poverty, the connector is things that affect the youth simultaneously. And that brought the youth together to do what they did. So in my opinion, I think that the speech of the president, a little bit late, but still very much reassuring. There is 3 elements of that speech that I had expected: confidence, hope, and of course, some kind of empathy. I saw a bit of hope. I saw a bit of confidence. I would have wanted to see more of the empathy. That I did not see a lot in the speech. But of course, this is the time to now isolate those who are looting and killing innocent citizens from the protesters, while urgently, as urgent as yesterday, addressing the grievances of the youth, which is not about EndSARS. It is about total police reform. It is about total security in the country. It is about speaking to the hearts and minds of the citizens, which is addressing issues around poverty, addressing issues around hunger, addressing issues around hope, providing hope that the country can work for everybody.
Chukwu, now you've stated what your reaction basically is to what the president said, Buhari, but do you feel it was a tad too late? Some have said that the president of the country of Nigeria seems to have a certain disconnect between him and his people. Do you feel that way? Very briefly.
Well, I don't feel exactly that way. There are certain policies of government that makes me feel that, yes, the president understands exactly what is going on. But remember that it is not just this government. I think that have been a lot of systems decay that over the years have not allowed the citizens of the country to enjoy the enormous wealth of the nation. So I do not think that the president is disconnected, maybe a little too little for the kind of problem that already exists over the time. But in this particular issue, like I said earlier on, I think that the president's speech would have come a little bit earlier, but is still better late than never.
Now, Mr. Amwa, do you feel Nigeria's president is up to the task? He's been saying that those who are throwing accusations and criticisms about, especially in West Africa, should tread cautiously, that they should, hasten slowly when it comes to addressing this matter. Your reaction to President Buhari's statement?
Well, that's my brother Chukwemeka. The youth, when we don't treat the youth right and they explode, it's very difficult to contain their reactions. And I think when distrust builds up, it's even worse. So I think, yes, we shouldn't sit down until things explode to the level it has reached before we begin to call for calm. I think efforts should be made to ensure that the youth are assured of changes that they are asking for. Honestly speaking, it is a challenge to all West African countries because currently the youth population is growing at a pace that very soon, if there's any mismanagement of the youth, countries are not going to exist. So yes, I think I will encourage the Nigeria dialogue proposal by the president, but I think they should also take measures to address the concerns of the youth as quickly as possible.
Address the concerns of the youth. And that is the note on which we're going to wrap this. Thank you very much, Mr. Eze. Thank you very much, Mr. Amwa, as well, for joining the discourse on the AM show. Do have a lovely day. The AM show continues. Stay tuned.